Brian, between the Spurs and the Clippers. Quickly, your thoughts on the way that game was officiated. Doc Rivers had a lot of issues with it. Did you? And secondly, I guess most importantly, what chance do you give the Clippers to go to San Antonio and keeping this thing alive in a Game 6?
Well, I'm not going to rule this series over whatsoever because the difference between the two teams is tight. It's hard to believe, though, that a team like the Spurs would lose 2 games in a row like this. But, you know, the way the Clippers have to look at it is if they can get one win, they get to play Game 7 at home. That's what they were rewarded with. Look, they're officiating. There was calls in that series. There was calls in there that were obviously questionable, and it's going to drive you crazy if you're a Clippers fan and you break down each call. But you have to step past that, and you have to say, well, Blake Griffin was 1 of 9 shooting in the fourth quarter, and partially because they have no bench and he was tired out, and partially because Tim Duncan was great on him. You look at DeAndre Jordan missing 9 free throws. Yes, it's an annoying rule, but the rule is still in effect, and the Spurs have used it well in this series. And those were overwhelming reasons why the Clippers lost the game. I hated the technical foul call on Chris Paul, but the Clippers have been the number 1 complaining team with the number 1 technical team over the last 3 years, and officials have gotten tired of it, and they give them no leeway. So I do not like the call at all, but like with everything else, I understand why it happened. And that makes it very hard to deal with as a Clippers fan. But when you're so razor close as these two teams are, it's those little differences that end up being meaningful.
Rockets close their series out with the Mavs, and according to ESPN's Basketball Power Index, they have a 24% chance to win a series against the Spurs and a 35% chance against the Clippers. Are the Rockets the Atlanta Hawks of the East, or of the West, I should say, in how nobody really is giving them a chance?
Well, if you go man by man, and, you know, Mark Cuban said something like this before the series. He's like, they're not very good. And if you go past Harden and Howard, and you look at each individual player, I can see how you may come to that conclusion. But you have to give them credit for being amazingly resilient. They had as many injuries this year as anybody else. Nobody paid attention as much to it like they did in Oklahoma City because the profile is different. But they lost several key players for the year, and Dwight Howard for half the year. And now Dwight looks like he's playing really well. So you give them a puncher's chance. But they are going to be the underdog. But they have the guy who I voted for MVP in James Harden, and they have a guy who can be one of the best big men in the game when he's into it. So I expect that to be another close, thin series where the difference between the two teams isn't that great no matter who wins.
Mike Brian Windhorst, and now let's get to the situation with Kevin Love, where it appears clear we will not see him again for the remainder of this postseason. So that brings up questions both small picture and big. Small picture, do you think they can win a championship without him? Big picture, how does this affect what he will do this summer relative to what might have happened otherwise?
I'm not sure they can beat the Golden State Warriors at full power without Kevin Love, but I don't know if they could have beat the Golden State Warriors at full power with Kevin Love. If the Warriors are at their best and the Cavs are at their best, the Warriors might still have them. But they can get to the finals in the East. They still have, and this is arguable, I realize that, they still have the 2 best players in the Eastern Conference still alive. Now, that will incite people in Washington. John Wall is better than Kyrie Irving. It'll incite fans in Atlanta who say that they had 4 All-Stars. But Kyrie Irving at full power combined with LeBron, is a force. And the Cavs are going to have home court advantage in this series. So they still can do it. It will be hard. Their margin for error is shrunk, but they still can do it. When you look at Love, he's going to opt out of his contract and become a free agent. That was going to happen no matter what. The question is, he has three choices. Choice 1, sign somewhere else. Choice 2, sign a 1-year deal with the Cavs and go into the market again in a year when the salaries will be higher, and it also gives him a chance to evaluate his position a little bit longer. Or option 3 is to sign the full 5-year extension with the Cavs, which some people would advise him to do because he's got some health problems. I know this. Kevin Love had more fun in the first 3 games he played in the playoffs than he had in 6 years in Minnesota. You could tell how much he enjoyed playing so well when he had the 6 3-pointers in Game 3. He'd been waiting his whole career for that. So the idea that Kevin Love is going to go to the to walk away from the team that is going to be competitive, I don't see. If there's a beautiful situation elsewhere where he could walk in and feel more comfortable and be on a championship contender, I think he would do that. But I don't see Kevin leaving to go to another rebuilding situation. And what I'm basically saying is the Los Angeles Lakers. But he can figure out a way to delay the decision by going on a short contract.
In about an hour and a half, we are going to talk to David Griffin, the Cavs general manager, and see what answers we can get about that as well. But as far as Kevin and the injury, the last two reports were first it was he's going to miss this series against the Bulls. Now all the playoffs. Are we, I'm sure that a lot of this is based on the MRI. Are we going down the road of possible surgery? Was there a torn labrum in there? How much do we know about this injury?
Yeah, it's a torn labrum, which they said. I mean, I think the first point, after game 4, Kevin Love came out and said, I'm going to play in the first game of the next series. And well, that's one of the reasons why I came out and reported he's going to be out a minimum of 2 weeks before they even looked at the MRI. They knew he was out, probably for the series. I mean, he did not take a advanced medical degree to know that. It's a dislocated shoulder, not a sprained ankle. But they did leave the door cracked open. And I think there's, certainly the injury is bad. But there is some reason to believe he might be able to come back if the Cavs advance. But you don't want your players thinking about that. You don't want your fans thinking about that. The advantage the Cavs have, if there's any bright side in all this, is they get a week. Because of the way the other series have gone, they have 7 days to prepare a game plan and prepare their other players. And so they don't want anybody thinking about it. But I do think there's a chance. Is it 5%? Is it 12%? I don't know. That Kevin Love could play again in these playoffs, but it's not going to be something the Cavs are going to commit themselves to.
Well done, Brian. We always appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
It's Brian Windhorst, NBA analyst for us. Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Great insight. He's saying don't completely rule out the possibility that Love comes back. And that was the way that they phrased it. It was just basically don't expect it. We don't want to put any pressure on Kevin Love and all that. And he says that, he thinks that he'll still opt out of the contract, and we'll see what happens this summer. So we'll see. I agree with him that of all the players remaining in the Eastern Conference, there isn't any question LeBron is one. If you were choosing upsides to start a team with all the players in the Eastern Conference playoffs right now, LeBron would be the first pick. Would Kyrie Irving be the second? Would you take him ahead of John Wall? Would you take him ahead of Derrick Rose?
Yes.
Would you take him ahead of Jimmy Butler? Would you take him ahead of, what else am I thinking of? There's no one I'm walking necessarily. Anyone? Pau Gasol? No. Joakim Noah? No.
The way they've been playing, I would take Kyrie Irving. The way those two have been playing together, especially in fourth quarters, the points they're accountable for, it's been incredible. So, yeah, you have the top two guys. And you say that, I get it, but there are the supporting cast, which could prove to be huge. And let's also not forget J.R. Smith out for the first 2 games of the next series.
That hurts them. I think that's bad. They can overcome. Look, they're going to have to overcome the loss of Love. I think they get to the final. I agree with Brian. I think they will get to the final and not win it. And with Love, maybe they would have won it. Maybe not. We'll see who they play. 4 most interesting things we saw on Twitter is coming up next.